Hello everyone and thank you for joining me. For today, as I promised on one of my previous videos, I will try and show on how I basically heat set the feed with the nib in order for a better writing experience or drawing experience. Now, it is usually believed that ebonite feed are pretty much the best feeds out there and you should always opt for them. Unfortunately, based on my personal experience, I don't find that statement to be true. The thing with ebonite feeds, they usually custom made for a certain fountain pen, and as such, they will be most probably custom set up with the nibs that they're working with, and as such, they will work better. Usually, plastic feeds are produced a little bit more in mass, and especially normal regular feeds that usually fountain pens use might not be necessarily built specifically for a nib type, and as such, usually you'll have situation where the feed and the nib are not really working properly together. And again, unfortunately, a lot of times that blame is put on the nib rather than the feed. As an example, today I will be working on two nibs. This one is one of my B6 prototypes, my original ones. That's why I have it in multiple colors. It's literally probably the second one that I built, but I'm using it a lot for testing. And for today, what I have in here is a Kenwright medium stub nib. Now, I'll try and bring you close if the camera allows me, and hopefully I can actually show this. There is a gap in the tines in there, so the point of the nib doesn't actually unite, they don't really touch, so it's like a constant gap in between. If the camera cannot show it properly, I will try and take a picture and insert it here, so this way you can see the problem. So basically there's a gap in there, and that gap usually creates problem issues with either the flow or makes the nib wider than it actually should be. So the whole point of heat setting this regular feed with the nib is so that the feed takes the profile of the nib and they both work nicely together. How to test for this to make sure it's not the nib's fault? Very simple. Always look at your nib off the pen and look at it and see the defects that it might have when it's off the pen and it's by itself. Sometimes the feed might reshape the nib in ways that you don't want to, and in that case you actually work on the feed, not on the nib. So if I remove this, and if camera wants to work with me and I look at the nib, I should basically see that I don't have that gap at the tip of the nib. And that's how the nib is. It's normal, and it works as it should in theory. So what basically deforms it, it's the feed. And that's what we need to tackle, the feed, not the nib. The only thing that we have to make sure when the nib is off is that the alignment is correct, that the tines are basically the same size. If not, we make note of that and we fix it. But the alignment is what matters the most. And in this case, the alignment seems to be okay. So I'm going to work on this a little bit. Just I'll show you what I do, so I'll put it aside for now. And for the other one, it's basically kind of the same problem. This one has an Omniflex nib on it, and you could probably see at the end there there is a gap between the tines, and that's what we need to fix. Again, if the camera doesn't show it, I'll insert a picture here so you can see the actual issue. And again, just to make sure that is not the nib and it is the feed, that is the issue, we will remove it. And if we look at the nib now, that gap is gone, and the nib actually, the tines of the nib actually meet nicely at the end there. One thing again, make sure the alignment is correct and there are no issues with the alignment of the tines before working on it. And one thing that I like to do is actually floss the nibs before putting them on the pen in order to heat set them. To floss the nibs, I usually use this brass sheet. Doesn't have to be perfect, and insert it between tines. If this doesn't work like this, which it did though, and then just go all the way to the breather hole, and I do a couple of passes like this. This ensures that if I have any sharp edges in between the tines from production, it will sort of remove them a little bit, and at the same time you feel if there's anything in there that will actually impede the ink flow. That's one. And this is the Omniflex nib. These nibs, they have to be very thin towards the end because they usually have a very fine line when you have no pressure. And since they are semi-flex, you can actually get quite a little bit of flex out of them. You want to have a fine point in order to have a bigger range between what's fine and the maximum the nib can go. Obviously, you will also probably most probably have to clean them, but for now I'm not going to clean them. I'm just going to make sure there's nothing in there and the nib, it's nice and clean. And let me set myself up for the heat setting part and I'll explain the procedure then. Now, before going into this, basically, in all honesty, these two nibs are not the worst nibs that I had. I had Omniflex nibs on these Monteverde fountain pens that were much worse than this. This one actually is behaving quite well. I do apologize for my blue fingers. And as usual, black things are hard to focus on. So these nibs are actually not that bad, so you'll probably not notice a huge difference, but it might still create some issues with scratchiness, especially on the flex. Depending on how you write, the tines will actually separate if you write a little bit more on a side, and as you do upstroke or downstrokes, depending on how you hold it, one of the tines will dig a little bit more into the paper. So it's much better to actually align them. This is something that I do with all the nibs that I have, especially the ones that I putting them on my fountain pens for sale. Like I have this stub nib. This one, for example, might not be that much of a bigger deal because it's a more solid nib, but if you press on it, it could still create problems since there is a little bit of bounciness in the nib, and as you press, the tines will spread apart, and again you could end up in situations where the tines dig into paper depending on your hand position. Also, it could give you a thicker line than it should be and something that is not wanted, unless you actually like really juicy nibs. So a lot of times depends on your preference, to be honest with you. But I'm trying to have the nibs set up as close to what they should be, and then the user can basically customize them to their needs. Anyway, enough of that. Let's get into the process. So basically, these are generic ABS feeds. They're pretty much mass-produced in China. That you find them on a lot of fountain pens. And their profile tends to be more of a straight profile. Depending on the manufacturer and how much care they put in making them and how much wear the tooling that they use for making those feeds are, you will have different shapes, slightly different shapes to their profile, and it could actually affect the knee. But this is why I always like to heat set them. Now again, this is ABS plastic. This is not ebonite, so heat setting them will require higher temperatures. So a glass of hot water won't help you in this case. Usually ABS starts to be malleable around 140, 160 Celsius degrees, with a 180 becoming pretty much a liquid, and that's usually the temperatures. For example, for those of you that 3D print, those are usually the temperatures where you start printing with ABS. So as such, what you actually need is one of these, and this is basically a heat gun. You can find it pretty much in any shops like Home Depot. This one I got it from Home Depot some time ago, and I've been using it for a lot of things. Usually these are dedicated for paint stripping, and they come with different attachments that you can use, and that could actually help you in this case, because you can actually control the flow of the hot air that comes. So this way you can actually direct that straight onto the tip of the nib. By the way, things to be careful with, I'll try and put some white paper behind it. It'll be easier to see the nib. So one thing to be aware of, obviously this is going to be very, very, very hot. So again, don't burn your house down or your hands. Take appropriate measures. Wear gloves if you have to, and all that. Personally, I'm used to the heat, and I kind of got used to, in the sense that I know how far I can go and for how long I can hold it. So because I'm not wearing anything protective, don't think you don't need it. I'm used to it. I've been doing this for a long time. If it's the first time, please do protect yourself. And usually I use it on the first setting. I never use it on the second setting, which is way too hot. Even this one might be a little bit of an overkill, so you have to be careful. So again, depending on the airflow I'm having, so let's say that the airflow that I'll have coming out of the gun will be something like this, spread out a little bit, right? The way you want to work with the nib, it's only the tip. So you don't go the entire pen there, because you could actually damage the pen, even if it's metal, if it's painted like this nice beautiful paint that this pen has. You could actually damage it and lose its shine and make it more matte, and it will look weird. So you want to work only the tip of the nib, because that's what you want to actually bend, not the entire feed, just that portion of the nib. Same with this one, especially since this one is resin. Resin will start melting way before that ABS plastic will start to melt. So, so you want to make sure you don't melt your pen. Usually you want to have it mounted on the pen, because it's much easier to work with it and handle it than if it will be by itself. So again, following that line that you have in here as an idea, so if that's the edge of your flow, you work with the tip of the nib in there. You don't put the pen in there, because you're going to ruin your pen. But if you keep it here, your pen will be actually safe. And when you work with it, don't just hold it there. You kind of have to move it in and out. So from above, as an idea, if that's the edge of my heat, I will work basically something like this. In and out, but in this case it will be more like up and down, right? So I go outside, come back in the hot air zone, and I slowly build up that heat on the nib. What's going to happen is, slowly as you work that, the nib will naturally push on the feed, and the feed will by itself take the shape of the nib. So you don't actually have to push it. One thing that I do at the end, and again, you gotta be careful there not to burn your hand, Again, I'm used to it, so word protection, please. What I usually do, I don't push on the nib or on the feed. I just gently hold them together. That's it. Nothing else. Just hold them together until it cools down a little bit. Obviously, I usually kind of do this to slowly get used to the heat and transfer the heat a little bit and hold it. Wear again something protective, but make sure you don't press. You just literally touch and hold. You'll see me doing that at the end. Now I'll show the entire process for both pens. This thing makes some noise, so I'll reduce the volume during that process and I won't be saying anything. I'll just show you the work. And then at the end, I'll show you the nibs, how they look like, and especially if there anything else you need to check on them. And if the camera doesn't pick up because as you've seen from the pictures, the gaps are not that big, so you can't really see them with the camera properly, I'll take pictures and I'll show afterwards how it is with the nib on. And I'll show you one more thing that I usually do at the end, especially when I have flex nibs, in order to help them with better ink flow delivery. Anyway, let me get into it and let's see what's gonna happen. Again, work your heat up. Don't hold it there, move your hand and slowly build up the heat until the nib takes shape and actually pushes on the feed and that gap closes in there. You might need magnifying glass, especially when the gaps are very small and hard to see. But anyway, let me get into it and I'll talk to you once I'm done with both nibs. And now, if everything worked out well, personally I'll need a magnifying glass afterwards, because it will be hard to see this in this position that I am right now, so I'll double check them afterwards and I'll work on them a little bit more if needed. But in theory now, if I can't really see it here, but I'll double check it, in theory that gap should be gone. If not, I'll work a little bit more on it. And this is the other one, if you can focus on. And again, I'll take pictures and I'll show them right here if the camera doesn't pick it up properly. Yep, everything checks out. I checked it out with this magnifying glass and everything seems to be as it should. And that's about it. That's all you need to do in order to heat set. You've seen how long it lasted. You count, it's literally maybe a minute for both NIMs, which is not bad. You can work out that heat pretty fast. Now, additional thing that I usually like to do, especially for flex NIMs, in order to make sure I have good ink delivery when I flex with them. This one can get a little bit of flex on it. Again, hard for the camera to focus on, but you'll get the idea, hopefully. You can kind of see those tines splitting apart in there. So what I like to do, remove the nib and feed, and on the feed you'll see there are some channels in there. So what you want to do on those channels is basically not widen them, but make them slightly deeper. So you will need a blade like this with a fine point on it. And you just literally run the blade between those channels a couple of times. You don't have to press hard, you just go slowly. And again, pay attention to what you do. You don't want the knife to slip and cut you. Sometimes working on the table is probably better. And I'll do this in real time. That was one. And now this one has two channels, so I'll work on both of them. There's no actual rule on how many times you have to do this. Sometimes less is better, so if you need more, just come back at a later time and do it again. Just make sure you go end to end. This channel usually it's pretty wide and you don't have to work on it. There's actually play in the blade. Same as this one. Sometimes depending on the feed that you have, that channel, that nipple in there can be obstructed. So just make sure, again, there's nothing in there to block the ink flow. A lot of times this is the issue, not the actual nib or the feed by itself. Well, I guess it is the feed. It's just that the blockage can happen here. And that's about it. This usually helps. If not, I usually come back and do more passes. And yeah, that's about it. Nothing else special. The other thing that I like to do is after I do the heat setting, I do a test. So basically I remove the nib and feed. I put it back on the pen again just to make sure that that alignment is actually proper and nothing bad happened or nothing misaligned. And then I double check to make sure that the fitment it's still okay. Speaking of, let me double check. Yeah, there is no gap in there. Everything seems to be fine even after removing the nib. And in theory, this nib, unless it has other issues like sharp edges or other things like that, should work properly. And if you're interested on my final impressions on this one, well, stay tuned until Saturday. With that, that's pretty much what I do. If you have any questions, leave your questions below. Again, wear protection, be careful what you're doing if you're doing this. And I hope this helped someone out there and you found at least the process interesting. Doesn't take long, fairly easy to do, it's just you gotta be careful. That's all. Thanks for joining me. See you on Saturday.